Okay, go for it.
Hey everybody, welcome to the node.js package maintenance team meeting for, oh sorry, of course, right before I said I would chair, I took a sip of my coffee and, sorry, went down the wrong tube. So it's April 7th. So welcome everybody. We have a fairly short agenda, it looks like. So does anybody have any announcements or things they want to add to the agenda before we get into it?
Oh, one thing. I just came out of a Collab Summit meeting, and they're asking all the working groups to submit ideas to the Collab Summit. So they're planning to do an onboard kind of track in the first days of Collab Summit. So yeah, there's that. So anyone from the working group that can take that action item.
Could you open an issue just asking
Sure.
us to do that? Because I think that's a good way that we won't forget.
Yeah, sounds good.
Maybe even tag it for the agenda so that way we'll get a reminder if we don't do it.
Yeah, that would be good if we can have a discussion this week and make sure that it makes it on the agenda for next so that we follow up in time. I think that'd be really good. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I had a comment in the agenda regarding an issue opened by the Axios team looking for, if you scroll to the bottom of the agenda issue, it links to that. I didn't know if that was appropriate or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's let's add that. We'll just add that right on the end.
Yeah, sure. I don't really have any involvement, but I just felt it maybe worth bringing up to the group. So
yeah, I agree. Okay, yeah. So we'll start on the top, and then we'll just have that one as the last one again. With only 4 items, we should be able to get to everything, I think. So
cool.
Okay, if that's it, then we'll get into the number 309, which is governance models and methodologies for package maintainers. So you are actually the author of this. So do you want to get us started with where we're at in this discussion?
Sure. So thank you everybody for the feedback from the prior meeting. One of the so status then and since then is that the feedback was that creating like a little table of contents could be a separate action item that could encapsulate some of the work that I had put together that was maybe a little deviated a little bit from the original topic of strict governance models, of which some great examples were provided. So I opened an issue in the project number 333 with basically that draft of a table of contents that essentially just, little overview paragraph of the motivations of the working group itself, and then really just defers out to all the existing docs, either in various draft states or not. And then from there, so basically just, the table of contents is there. So just curious what the thoughts are. And then also maybe for those items, either in draft or missing, for those that were missing, I just kind of put a stub in place and wasn't sure if we would want to break those out to individual issues, or maybe we could all take one and just kind of contribute to it over the next few weeks or whatever. So yeah, the table of contents is there. Curious what the thoughts are. And then, next step for me would then be I could just zero in on just the governance portion for the next meeting. So that's where we're at there. So
so it looks like so I guess the next step on this would be fleshing out these TBD items.
Yeah, I mean that would certainly help bring so if I guess the prerequisite to that is the table of contents itself a good collection of topics, and if those topics and kind of subtopics jive with everybody else, then I think the next step would be for the draft, in particular the documents that are in draft, I guess maybe we could make an issue for each one, and then they could all be worked on in parallel. When they're resolved, they could then maybe move out of draft. But either way, the topics are there. And so, maybe someone looking for a topic sees that it's empty, maybe they jump into and I was thinking, if we create an issue for each draft, we could put a link to the issue in the markdown file. So if anybody's looking like, oh, this isn't done, they could, maybe be prompted to. So yeah, basically just if the table of contents looks good from a organizational perspective, then yeah, we could probably break out into individual issues per topic and then just kind of let that happen organically.
But I think it would be okay to land this without having filled in the governance and the code. I don't know that we have to tie those together. We should, it highlights a couple of important things like the code of conduct we need to execute on ASAP, but I don't think we need to tie this particularly to it. The other thing that it did remind me is that at the end of the agenda, we should also tag on discussing the PKGS org. We have initial agreement that we can do that, but there's a number of sort of things we need to talk through on our side.
It is on the agenda.
Oh,
It's actually
okay.
Already, so yep.
Okay, perfect. But the governance is related to that, in that we may need some additional governance associated with that. So.
Yeah, I think the table of contents was mostly just a little offshoot. So it's, yeah, hopefully we can get that and still work on, or I can still work on governance as its own little umbrella.
I guess I'm thinking, sorry, yeah, I was thinking of those as our code of conduct and governance in our own repo. So they may not be TBD, but.
Yeah, I think this is more the guidance we're providing to
Right.
other package maintainers around these issues. And I think we just haven't written a full, here's the code of conduct's recommendation, here's the governance recommendation, here's, those. So yeah, slightly different topic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But we refer back to our own as like, here's an example, and then other notes within that table of contents. But yeah, either or, I'm sure we'll figure it out.
So I definitely agree. The table of contents looks like an awesome addition. Does anybody have any questions or feedback on what we have here that they would like to air on the call, as opposed to maybe just getting some approvals and merging this in the PR? Okay, no objections. Sounds like a good thing. So I guess we'll get a few folks just in there just to do a proofread and get some approvals, and then we'll move forward with that.
Cool. I'll drop in a comment as well that that if that gets approved, I'll also be able to create individual issues for the TBDs or missing spots as well, and do something, circle back to that next call or something for volunteers.
Yeah, that sounds good. I do think though the plan is to land it with those TBDs in place.
Oh, for sure.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No problem. Sounds good.
So coming back to the original issue, do we have any other? I guess this then becomes solely let's document different governance models. Do we have any updates on that part of it?
Not that part specifically, no. But yeah, now that little side quest is complete, I can circle back to the original motive.
Okay, so I will remove the tag for the agenda on this for now, and then if we need to re-add it, once we have more progress on that, we can for the next week.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
Excellent. Okay, is there anything else on that before we move on? Nope. Okay. So now we're talking about the PKG.js org, which is number 271. So it looks like maybe Michael, do you want to do? You had a couple topics on there, and
yes. So basically we've got approval to do that. By default though, you know, if we just extend the node.js project sort of ownership scope to include PKGS, when we go to create new repo, well, you know, if by default we would need to transfer the org owners to be the same org owners as for the node.js organization. And if we needed to add new repos, we would have to go through the regular process that's defined, which is to like open an issue in the admin repo, and you know, have one of those org owners, you know, created on request. So for if that's what we want to do, that's fine. We can just I can move forward with trying to land the changes to the governance. In our earlier discussions, my understanding is, you know, we probably wanted to ask for something more in terms of having some responsibility for the PKGS or delegated to the package maintenance team. In that case, what we need to do is, you know, capture what we want delegated and to who. And I think that's where my comment came back to governance, is because I don't think we can say like all members of the package maintenance team can have the rights to be org owners, right? Because that would probably be a bit too big a set to be consistent with what we're doing, at least in the rest of the node organization.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that so I agree with the point that everybody is probably not where we want to be. I think we want a higher participation rate in this team than we want making repos. But that said, I don't think we want to go toward the full node model, which is an admin approval and, you know, all of that process. So I think what we need then is a codified set of org owners on PKGJS, which have been delegated the role of creating repos in PKGJS. Does that sound like the next? That's
right.
the right.
And I think we need the governance, which makes it clear how people become those people, right? Because that'll be, you know, we can basically say, and it's, I think, you know, it can possibly be rolled into chartering the package maintenance team. And, you know, the charter, one of its roles will be to manage the PKGS organization. And, you know, in the governance for that's chartered, it would be, and like there's people who can get into these roles through this process, and then therefore they're the ones who can do these things. But we need to work on defining that governance and, you know, the processes and those kinds of things.
Yeah, I agree. So in the effort of making it as open as we can while still maintaining, you know, quality and you know, ability to manage it. It seems to me like a pretty simple thing would be make it the people who regularly contribute to the package maintenance working group today as just the default list. And when I say regularly, I mean pretty much folks who are on this call today. I mean, I guess probably Jordan Harbrand, and there's a few other folks who aren't on the call today that regularly participate. And then saying that is our gating function, which is like, you know, 3 to 6 months worth of regular participation in the package maintenance working group. I mean, that's what I would propose. I think that's
right.
a fairly
something like that. I think it needs to be a little bit more of a formalized process of, you know, here are the requirements, and then the existing members can vote in a new person, and then, you know, as a starting point, we propose these people as, you know, people who've already met the criteria.
We piggyback on, in terms of timeline, just do that yearly, at the same time that the other voting memberships are happening in, like, let's say like the CPC or OpenJS, just to like make it all at the same time. We could say like the initial set could be, as Wes said, like this is who we propose to begin with, and then like, let's say, you know, potentially rationalize it that we'll vote, or there will be some sort of like vote happen at the same time as other votes are happening. If there's somebody new that wants to have that, like, I really don't care if I have the access to creating like repositories or not. Like if I have to create an issue, like I think that's probably better if we have a subset of people and it's not everybody on this call, like, you know.
Yeah, I would almost, you know, echo that we could, like, from the membership we could elect a number of people who are trusted with that responsibility. The reason I'd go for that as well is that it's not just creating the repo, but there's requirements for repos in the organization in terms of, you know, we need to have a code of conduct, we need to have a proper license. So
well, okay, so but some of those things we can standardize without making that tied to the repo creation, right? So I think the repo creation is really just an administrative task, right? Like I don't think we're going to tell people no in most cases, that, like, no, that project doesn't belong here, right? I mean,
no, it's a matter of confirming that there is a license file, like making sure that when it comes in, it's got all the things that we need for it to be a project. So it's not necessarily doing it, but like we want to, you know, if something came in and the license was GPL, we'd have to say, sorry, you can't have it, you know, it's got to be one of the foundation approved licenses. And things around the DCO, we're going to have to like improve our sort of implementation validation of that. So it'd be like create a new repo, but make sure we have the right tools that validate commits are checked against DCOs and stuff like that. So I don't think it's a lot of work, but it's more that in addition to just doing the mechanical GitHub action, we're expecting the people to assume some responsibility of making sure that we've met all the requirements of creating that new repo. And that's why my only argument would be not to throw to everybody in the bucket, but the people who've said, yeah, okay, I understand what those are. I'm happy to take that responsibility of doing the checks. And so not necessarily an exclusionary thing, but more of an opt-in. And then other people, if they want to create one, they can open a request. And if they only do it once in a while, they don't need to remember what all the things they'd have to check or whatever. It's not a big thing, but I think it's just more about trying to make sure we keep an eye on that.
Is it just a matter of having a checklist than just making sure someone is kind of, validating that? Like, so for instance, someone made a great point in the comments just now. If there's a particular repo structure that should be followed, then you can make like a template for that possibly, right? So it seems like some of those administrative things are just like a Google Doc issue template or repo template away possibly.
Absolutely, yeah.
so I'm fine with that. I would like to hear Dom's opinion as one of the only other people who's actually created repos over there yet, as to if this would meaningfully change the work he's been actively pursuing, just as a point to make sure that this doesn't interfere with progress.
I think what we discussed here totally makes sense, and I think we can solve most of the administrative bit with templates. So we'll have to have license the code of conduct and all of these. These are very small things that we need to. Okay, somebody wants to wave. So these are the small administrative tasks that we can definitely handle. And then regarding the process of who can do what. Yeah, can we just get a talk started and let's get rolling? The only thing I'd argue is that maybe a yearly voting is something that we need to relax a little bit, but we can maybe get a starting document going and then see which requirements we can relax and have them sort of less strict in terms of who can do what and when.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be for if somebody is now active and doing a lot of work in an area and it makes sense to add them to the list, we should be able to do that at any time.
Agreed. Do we think that doc belongs in the package maintenance working group repo, or do we need something in the other org?
I think if we're going to be like asking for the package maintenance team to be chartered and sort of transferred that responsibility from the TSC, it would make sense to me for it to be in the package maintenance area, possibly with in the PKGS org a link back that says, hey, if you want to ask for a repo being opened here, here's the governance over in the other repo.
Okay, does anybody want to take responsibility for opening that issue and kicking off the discussion?
I can open an issue with the a few points at the top to get people's thoughts starting.
Awesome. And maybe add the agenda label so that it's tackled in the
Yep.
next. Cool.
Yep, will do.
Okay, does anybody have any other topics on that for this week? It's looking like no. Okay, looks like we're going back to an oldie but a goodie. The next steps on support levels in package JSON. We haven't covered this one in a while, and it's sort of stalled out a bit, it seems like. So
The next step really is on the tooling. And actually, I've been thinking a little bit about this. I really would love to find some time, but I haven't yet. But I think, you know, a few people, my thoughts were a few people had started on the tooling, and I wanted to see and talk to them before I, you know, jumped in, if I did find time to update them or whatever. But it's kind of like, okay, who wants to be involved in updating the tooling? And, you know, let's get started on that, because I think that's the last piece we've said we need to do before we make the publicity and trying to get more like sort of input and usage. Because if we look in PKGS, there is a tool there, right?
yeah, I started that.
Right.
So it's pretty simple right now. And I think Manuel maybe started, let me pull that up, started contributing as well.
Right.
And let's see, I think, but I don't think he finished. He was working on the CLI portion of this, but I don't know how much he finished there. But anyway, yeah, definitely. It seems like that is the next step. So if we can nail down this checklist so it's pkgjs/support pull request number 1 is adding the CLI. I think if we have that, I think then we have a 1.0, which would be, you know, I think that all we would need to then ratify the draft and start farming for feedback, right?
Right. Okay. So is this something where it's updated for a latest version and just needs some reviews getting it landed?
I believe it was updated for the latest version. That would be something to make sure we double check.
Okay.
But the CLI portion was just, you know, we have a library that validates, but how do folks use the library? They probably need a CLI, right? Or something to actually call in their library, on their libraries, to make sure they're compatible and up to date. I don't know how you all see us using the tooling and recommending library authors use the tooling. Oh, actually, we probably need a generator too, right? We need something that goes through and asks some questions and says what is your support level, and then outputs the proper format, right?
Right.
So I think this goes hand in hand with the npm init PKG
Yep.
discussion. So that's the create package PKG package namespace that I'm trying to get for this group. So I don't have an update on that yet, but I think that's something that I'm going to try to look at right now, actually. So I'll try to have an update by end of day.
And is there an issue just outlining the sort of approach? I know that we've talked about it briefly, but is there somewhere that captures like how that flow might work? So if somebody wanted to start working on it, we have that to start with, or?
I think Wes had done some work in a create
I have
CLI in the PKG.js org.
Yep. So I also started that. I'm a good starter. So the create repo is more of, and this is why it's not exactly what you're talking about. So the create repo today is more of a pattern for making an npm init create packages. So I had a long time ago started my own generator, just following some patterns I had found worked. So I have a package, create package JSON, which supports a bunch of things that I think would be valuable in this conversation, but it's not everything. And then what I did was I extracted the common logic around collecting user input. So this is CLI flags, turning those into prompts, using inquirer and yargs as sort of marrying those together into a pattern that you could use to make these type of generator packages in a way that they compose together well. Because that was one of the problems in previous generators, is it wasn't like the composability was a nightmare. If you look at Yeoman, it's just crazy. And if you've ever maintained a Yeoman generator, it is a nightmare that I will never personally embark on again. I had one of the early days WordPress generators that was fairly popular, and I just never want to touch that again. So this is a slightly better pattern, I think, but what it needs, so the next steps on taking that create repo and turning it into what we're talking about, is the actual thing that's in the create repo needs to be moved into a different repo, and then we need to use it in the create repo, right? So it's actually like pulling it, the inner part out into a separate package, and then making the create pkg create an implementation of that separate library. So I'm happy to pair with somebody if they're able to take a look at that. I can show them the work I did with create package JSON, and then I have a create Git, and I have a few other packages that sort of implement this pattern that might be helpful to get somebody set up in starting this new work. And then the idea would be we'd then use the package that Darcy is trying to secure the name to as the final publish spot. So I'm happy to have, maybe we should schedule like a deep dive and go over what our plans are for supporting that, and make like a technical set of technical decisions, because I've just been the only one working on it. So I've made some decisions, and I don't know if those jive with how everybody else sees just the pure technical direction of this going. So maybe, if we could schedule that and have like a deep dive on that sometime soon.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea. We can use that to share so everybody else can get up to speed, and hopefully as part of that also document, like, here's the high level overview and here's the things we need to do in terms of bullet points, because that will make it easier, I think, for other people to get concretely engaged. Because I think you started with, that's probably the right place to put the generator. And then this other one can stay as the, so I guess we've got support and create. So support would be the one that just basically validates, and then create is the one that creates. Would you see those as two separate things, or?
Actually, what I would see is the support package would provide a set of tools for working with the support data. One of those tools would be a reusable generator component that we would integrate into the create package via this composability of generator layers, so that we could, if you had an existing package and all you wanted was to generate support metadata, you could use the support package directly. If you were scaffolding a new package,
right,
data, that would be what the create package is for.
Got it. Okay.
I think, and again, this is where I farm for dissent here. Darcy, if you have a different idea about how that should work, I would like to hear. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. But yeah, so yeah, I think scheduling an hour where we can get that bit better documented and concrete next steps would be good.
Does anybody want to take on opening that issue?
I don't quite know all the intricacies, but I'm happy to attend and participate in the deep dive session.
Okay, I'll take on scheduling that, and then we'll discuss the next steps during that meeting.
Awesome.
Okay, so does anybody have anything else on that topic before we move on? Doesn't sound like it. Okay. So last item on the agenda here is the Axios outreach. So who's the most participatory here? I might be, only because I did comment in their issue and John brought this up and I think pinged me on it. So basically, Axios is a fairly popular library. It has some support issues at the moment. If you look at github.com/axios/axios, and then it's issue number 2747. One of the collaborators on the project basically said, hey, I tried to help clean things up. There's a bunch of outstanding work being done that is not getting completed because the maintainers are not doing a lot. So John brought up maybe we, as the package maintenance working group, could take a look at what is missing there and see if we can connect folks to the project. Maybe similar to how we've done, well, we've started to do with Express and MQTT as pilot. Maybe it would be worth looking at Axios as a next pilot.
That was my thought, was without jumping in and necessarily overwhelming the working group here. Maybe it could also be a way to help explore the topic of governance models, which is kind of why it also caught my eye as well. A, because help, and also because it maybe seemed relevant to current topics within the team agendas. Because I actually was thinking as I was going through the doc, like, oh, there's already like surveys and stuff that are already like there. So it seemed like maybe even though we can't work individually with every single project, it certainly couldn't hurt to send out surveys and just curate the feedback a little bit, and then but maybe this is one of those cases where we could pull them in if it was warranted as well.
Has there been any response from the original maintainers?
I'm looking in the Axios issue, and it looks like Wes's comment from March 2nd is the last thing there. It's still open, so it seems like it's same state as when originally brought to this group.
I can see commits getting merged.
But yeah, that's a good point. I haven't actually looked at the history of the project since then, because it looks like there was a commit a couple of days ago. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, part of the outreach was that someone had also posted to Reddit about it. So I don't know if that maybe garnered some extra attention, and maybe they're proactive now, but just haven't commented back. So maybe it's a matter of saying, hey, is everything still cool? Do you want our help, or have you guys been working it out?
So it doesn't look like, it looks like the same person who originally posted the "Hey, we need help" issue is the one who's been merging things.
Okay, that's.
So, but they're not one of the original maintainers, I don't believe. They're not an owner on the repo. They're only a collaborator.
Mm-hmm.
So if this was something to move forward with, we definitely need to see who the owners are.
Mm-hmm.
Which none of these people. So they mentioned that Emily Morehouse and used to have meetings with this person. Let's see, it's Chinese fan. I'm not sure what their relationship is to the project, but so maybe reaching out to Emily. Maybe actually what we should be doing here. So I don't think I say we collectively, the folks on this call, should take a lot of action. I think what we should probably do is reach back out to Chinese fan and say, hey, if you're interested in something like this, maybe get a group of the Axios maintainers and owners together to have a discussion on what is needed, and then come back to this group with that, as opposed to us getting directly involved. Would
it be, I'm not sure how, I mean, obviously you were probably involved in the Express outreach, but would maybe one approach be to comment in the the issue in our repo and say, hey, we have a survey, we have like a little intake process. Would you be able to contact the maintainers, and if they could start by filling this out and expressing their point of view, that would maybe be an actionable way for us to get involved. If the maintainers fill out the survey, or basically, as you said, they make a first step, then that's the cue for us to figure out if it's something. So maybe just having them fill out the survey, or that they can self-organize. And then again, if they don't do anything, then obviously you can lead a horse to water, so to speak. But that could be a thought. We could leverage the resources we already have in the projects. And I'd be happy to do that. I'm obviously new, so I don't want step on any toes or speak out of turn. But if it was just as simple as, hey, we have some material in this document, if you want to raise an issue and fill out the form, and we'll be more than happy to do what we can after that. Just a thought.
So just trying to read up on the issues that they've actually posted. And they started. So it looks similar to essentially what we've seen in some other projects, in that there is an overwhelming flood of support kind of triage issues. And there are a lot of pull requests that may or may not need to be released.
Yeah.
Can we? So I have little experience in trying to rally people to contribute and to organize a community there, but it seems like that is the necessary thing there. There are other approaches in how I've seen people handle that, as in declare issue bankruptcy and close all issues and try to restart from scratch. But
I mean, I think looking at the at sort of the contributors, it doesn't look like there's two people with more than say 15 or 16 commits, but they haven't been active for a couple of years. I think we would want somebody in it, because it's worked well to have like Wes, who's somebody who's saying, hey, I want to help build the community contributing to here. Like, so if there was somebody from the organization there that says, I want to try and champion that, and then that would be somebody we could work with, would be a good model. So finding out if there's anybody in the project who's like, yeah, I can't do it all on my own, but I'd like to work with this team to, try it out, that would make sense. So identifying who that champion from the project might be first, it would be the next step.
I think that's kind of part of the challenge is this, this I'll paste it in the chat, but it sounds like from the contributor who reached out to this working group, what they're saying is that the owner of the repo has been MIA for a while. There's a second contributor who can help out with releases, but that's about it. So, and I don't know if this is maybe the precursor to how some of these packages end up getting like transferred to owners that maybe kind of take advantage of overwhelmed packages.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like there's a vacuum in the ownership space, and the contributors are trying to kind of. So I think maybe we might be in the same position as like we'd also be calling into the vacuum, and what happens if that doesn't, and then maybe this is just overthinking it, but I don't know if this is one of those cases where like someone's like, I really just don't want this package anymore, who wants to take it, and then that could be a good thing, but it could also be a bad thing. So there could be a reason why this owner is MIA as well, and so So I don't know, but it sounds like there's a vacuum, and they're asking for help to kind of backfill that, short of actually getting the ear of the owner.
Yeah. So my opinion here is that recognizing that we can't play Superman and come in and swoop in and save the day on the millions of packages that are probably in the state.
Yeah.
You know, this one is rather important, and I think that's why it got the attention. It's got a lot of people depending on it. I think maybe the discussion that would be most productive for us would be, when these issues come up, what is our default response, right? And I think our default response is, unless a maintainer comes to us and says, I want to champion this, I want to rebuild the community around this particular project, help me do that, we can't really do much other than point them to our sort of docs on this stuff. So I think in this case, maybe the best next step would be go back to this particular user and say, hey, if you can rally the troops and be the point of contact, we will amplify your need to the community. Be that through the people on this team who can retweet, hey, Axios is looking for maintainers and triagers and whatnot, or maybe the filling out the survey and then putting it on our list of it's a very short list right now, but maybe we need a more prominent list of projects looking to grow their maintainer base or something,
Right.
That seems to me like what we as a team do, and it really relies on them coming to us and making that clear. Does that
make sense?
Yeah, I think that kind of approach definitely makes sense for where we are now, right? Like, if we get through our trial ones and we figure out some great ways that are magic, then maybe things will change. But today, I think we really do need a champion in the project to work with, as opposed to, hey, we're going to go solve, a problem where there isn't anybody there.
I think it's not enough to have just a person who says, I'm going to be that person. We do need the original maintainers to basically acknowledge that they cannot or do not want to maintain, and that they also want to give up the control. And I mean, in all fairness, for whoever doesn't want to maintain, they can just say, fork it, and then that's what needs to happen.
Could that be as simple as just saying the person who steps up needs to be an owner on the repo?
I think so.
Or at least need to get that owner on board or I mean, we can try to reach out in some other ways, but I'm not sure what are the non-rude ways other than creating an issue in the repo to reach out to someone. But I mean, for something like Axios, it has 32,000 dependents. It would be nice, hint, to get an API to sort those by download count, so that we know who actively uses Axios, right?
Right.
So that we know who are people who are invested in the fate of Axios, right? So that these are the people that would probably be the most interested to take over any work that needs to be taken over, or at least they know that they should plan for contingencies. But something like Axios, that's 32,000 dependents and 10 million downloads, so clearly it is a large piece.
Someone using it.
Yeah. So yeah, I think and the NPM page for it lists 2 collaborators, and none of them are listed in the issue as being active. So unless the ownership of that package, both in NPM and GitHub, can be reestablished by somebody who is willing and able to take over that, there's only so much we can do, right? And I know that person, they have commit rights because they've been merging PRs. Do they have publish rights, or can they resolve to have publish rights? Then we can maybe continue working from there. But these are the first 2 things that need to happen, right?
The irony is, if we had a governance model they could follow, they'd be able to document who owns what. So it's definitely like a little catch.
Right.
Yeah. So
Well, but they could have their own governance model that we're not aware of as well. So,
Right.
I mean, the point is, though, that we as a team will only engage at that level if certain bars are met. And in this case, the bar that we're saying we need to set is a person steps up to say they want to grow the community and take over the ownership. And that person must have the agreement of the owners in that they have given them at least commit rights and publish rights on the package.
Right.
Like if you don't have that minimum bar, we just say, sorry, there's nothing we can do. You need to get that before we'll even engage in trying to help.
yeah, that seems.
I mean,
reasonable.
there are things that we can try to do, but
Yeah.
maybe we should sort of brainstorm things that we can. I mean, trying to reach these people without applying pressure. I don't know what are the correct channels, but we should probably discuss those. And maybe we need to open up yet another document on our rules of engagement. I think there were some issues that were created in the past, and I think that we definitely had issues raised about that fact that we should document vetting the new people, the new maintainers willing to take over a package, sort of the process of handover. So I think we need to prepare some documentation there.
I think it could be an interesting exercise for us in terms of how do you, as we mentioned before, like the key thing is like who's dependent on this. It seems like there's a large, 10 million, but how do we figure out who the stakeholders are that we would want to reach out to try and help get support for the module? So that kind of seems like in scope for this team to understand how you do that and try and figure out how to do that. Because it'll be, for any project like this that has a large amount of use that's in the state where they don't have enough help, that's kind of the first thing to try and understand.
Did Dominicus mention there's a rules of engagement doc, or is he suggesting we define one first?
You need to define that. I don't know whether we started it at any point.
We had we certainly captured some things in terms of how we were going to get involved.
And some of these things are documented in the existing documents, sort of without much detail. But yeah, we do need that.
We'd have to read through and.
So the thing that comes to mind mostly is that we said we'd have a 3-stage process, where the first stage was these pilot packages, the second stage was impact packages. This to me seems to fit into the impact package stage, and I am positive we have an open issue on what the impact stage should look like. So it seems to me like the next step is to go into that issue, which I'm trying to find right now, and then document what are the rules of engagement for the impact packages, which is going to be an older one. So I'm trying to key packages, pilot, high impact packages here. It's 143. I'm linking it in the chat right now. So this would be, I think, where, and we have a start of it. So number of downloads, the evaluation priority here, and a fair bit of discussion. So the next step, I think, would be to continue this and maybe propose Axios as a high impact package, and make sure that it aligns, the criteria aligns with what we're seeing with Axios.
Right. And I think we could consider if it would be also a candidate for the what do you call the first stage again? Sorry, the pilot one. But again, I think that comes back to, like, for these pilots, we need a project which will engage in terms of having a champion and the things we've talked about.
Yeah, so pilot packages is issue number 142. And I think as we have documented here is we were just doing Express and MQTT. But on the list here was a few other ones that we didn't ever, we have request, which is deprecated in favor of, packages like Axios. So maybe somebody needs to pick up the pilot packages issue and re-champion it.
I think it sort of comes back to we've made progress on Express because we've had a champion to help move that one forward. And that's where, if the person who opened that is an active champion that says, hey, I'm going to be putting work in here to try and to grow contributorship and figure out how to do that, them joining this team and then working with the team to do that could make sense as another pilot, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's a good way to try to flesh out the various problems in the future with any similar situations. And maybe, yeah, maybe asking them to fill out the questionnaires as well is a nice way of capturing some of the perception of what's going on.
And maybe asking them to do that and seeing if they want to join the team, right, and participate in the meetings, and because I think that would be we could spend part of our meeting when we have time talking about what they're trying to do and how we can support, is if they're participating here, right?
So I would be happy to, yeah, I think giving them the survey would be great. I have to say, having filled out the survey, felt a little redundant, some of the questions. So maybe if we're going to do that outside of the original group who helped build the original survey. So I was fine answering them just because I was part of the group. But if we're going to new folks, they may be less inclined to fill out redundant questions. Maybe we could turn it into a Google survey and then just pare down the questions a little bit. If that is something people want, then I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, if you have good insight onto, like, okay, some of these just didn't make any sense as the person filling it out, that would be great to improve it. Yeah,
that's why I was saying I would be one of the only people who actually filled out the survey.
Exactly. So yeah, if you're volunteering, that sounds great.
I mean, a lot of that information maybe we already have from the issues that are raised. It's just that I haven't read through it, and yeah.
But I think part of it is getting that owner interaction, right? Because I mean, I guess it's tough because it's great to see someone trying to help out a community, and there's certainly resources, but they're obviously handicapped in their ability to 100% execute on those intents. So, I guess, is there like a short-term, long-term, it's like, hey, until we can get your owner to like fill out this survey or something like that, here's some resources those can help, and then we'll bring you in under the wing and like give you first class support if we get the owner, and then you guys work out a governance model, or is it kind of like all or nothing? Like, what could we tell them right now if they were here, so to speak?
So let's be aware we only have 2 more minutes. Is there a takeaway, Owen, from that we could add as a like a next step that you think, or?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess it's if we refactor the survey, we get it in a nice spot. Is it sufficient for just that collaborator fill it out, or do we want them to go hand it back to the owner, and then, like you said, that like minimum bar, what can we do without the owner, and what could we do when the owner is involved? Is it, here's our links, if you get the owner, then we'll do this, or?
Okay, so let's call this the next step. Do you mind? I'm saying you because if you're all right with following up on this, but feel free to say no. We'll put it on somebody else. A quick response in that issue where they responded and say, look, we're trying to figure out what we can do to help you. Can you reach out to the current owners and get them involved a little bit so that we can discuss what next steps should look like? And if you could do that, then we can have another discussion in a little bit, or in that issue around what we can provide as far as docs and stuff. But again, that's sort of the next step, and then we can discuss further out there. And I'll take over refactoring the survey, and I will post it in that thread as well, and say, hey, could you fill out this survey?
Okay, that's fine. I can do that.
Okay.
I'll go through the existing issues and see what needs reviving and what are the new docs we need to write. So I'll follow that order.
Excellent.
Awesome. Okay, well, we're at time. So does anybody have anything they want to say before we close?
CI status repos. Sorry, CI template repos, please, Michael.
Do you want to give a quick update on where the status is on that?
Right.
We have an approval.
I think we've got the approval. We'll just need to make sure, like I said before, we've got the right licenses and that kind of stuff in them. So I will go ahead and try and, I guess I can just create the issues just as we put stuff in. The first things we should do is make sure we get the licenses and code of conduct and that kind of stuff in.
We're talking about the Travis and GitHub actions.
Yep.
So yeah,
Yep.
cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
those still need them, but I can create them. Just want to make sure that as we put content into them, the first thing that goes in is those things.
Cool. Awesome.
Okay.
Cool. Thanks.
Awesome. Anything else?
Just quickly about the dependence tooling. I saw there's a issue in NPM RFCs for it. Rui, do you know if that's going to come up in the NPM RFC meeting tomorrow?
Yeah, no, tomorrow is a deep dive, and I think it's going to be specific on resolutions. It's going to be a different topic. Yeah. So
Okay.
I think next week. Yeah.
Okay, great. Cheers.
I guess on that topic, not to pester you, Wes, but I might anyway. I know that there's like a PR there was a PR to fix the issues you reported in the Express status board. And it's been open for quite a while. So it'd be nice to get that landed, know if it's actually resolved the issue or whatever, just so we can close it out as something that we're looking at on our end.
Yeah, for sure. So I have not circled back on that. So I have one person who has a draft PR to convert it to use the GraphQL API. I really liked that addition, but they have not finished it. And so that has sort of been sitting on my plate because I didn't want to step on their toes and make a bunch of changes under there. And then I also know John was looking at making the perf updates that would help it not time out in GitHub Actions. I can circle back with him. Maybe. So one thing I can do, which is just not the end result though, is I can just run it locally. So I can run and it'll update the branch and push it locally. Anybody who has commit rights on that repo can do a manual update. So if I just started running it once a week locally, it would be up to date. It just wouldn't be the optimal solution, which is no human intervention. It's updated every day.
But I guess, Andrew, you're the one who's done the PR for the GraphQL conversion.
Oh, is that Andrew? I didn't realize.
Yeah, no, that's me.
Right. So I guess from what I understood, it's ready to go. So that's why I just like to close if you think there's something that needs to happen.
So
Sorry.
I fixed up the PR. I think it's at the draft now. So if you think there's anything else to be added, Wes, feel free to comment. Push any changes.
Awesome. I am sorry. My GitHub notifications are really backlogged from this darn minimist thing. And I've just been slowly chipping away at them. But so I missed this one completely, and I'll have the tab open now. I will take a look today.
Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Awesome. Yep. Okay. Anything else? Okay. Well, I guess that's a wrap. Thank you all for coming to the package maintenance team meeting for April 7th. We'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Talk to everybody later.
Oh.
Right.
See ya.